Hello, hello. I am in the beautiful healing space of Light Owl Healing Center here in Fremont, Seattle, Washington, in the stolen land of the Duwamish tribe, Duwamish people. And yeah, I'm feeling called to just say all that in the beginning of this session or this talk where I'll be talking about another part of the mind. And today we are talking about the part of our mind that is called in Sanskrit ahankara, often translated as the ego. I don't always love or choose to translate it like that, mostly because we have our own interpretation or connotation to what the ego or egotistic means. And so I think a better translation for this context or for learning about the ahankara is our sense of I, our sense of individuality. And that's really what, according to yoga philosophy, right, where these teachings are coming from, or Vedic philosophy, another way to describe that, is our ahankara is the part of our mind, a part of ourself that really likes to differentiate itself. It likes to feel special, it likes to feel different, it likes to feel unique, and like we're the only thing that it is, different. And that's a beautiful thing, that's really important to have in your sense of I, in your personality, in the part of your mind. And I think that's the reason that I don't love to necessarily associate it with ego, because there is this big lingo around the ego is bad, or let's eliminate the ego or eradicate the ego. And coming from the space of perhaps more of like your sense of individuality or your sense of I, you can start to perhaps see or witness or balance when our sense of I might be out of balance. And so another example for this could be when our sense of I is not really there, or when we don't have an ahankara, or when our ahankara is non-existent, we can actually feel a bit depressed. That's the way that it was described to me, that are moments when we might not have a strong sense of what I value or what we value. When our ahankara is not there, when it's low, it might be times where we don't speak up, or we don't have an opinion, or we might be a little bit more gullible, because we don't have like a firm stance on ourselves, or that sense of I, or like, what do I like, what do I need? And so that helps me understand that it is not about eliminating the ego in this teachings. It's more about balancing them and observing them when they come up. And I think a good exercise that you could do as a practice could be to write down like 5 things that you really like about yourself that are really awesome, and then 5 things that are not that great, 5 things that maybe you don't like about yourself. And this is great. This is something that I do with some coaching clients, some mindful coaching clients, as an exercise like this. But you can do it with a friend, or maybe with a partner, and just explore each other so that the other person can read it for you. And you'll notice, like, I want you to see what happens, like, when you hear like the 5 things that are great, and then what happens when you hear the 5 things that are not so great, even though you wrote them, like you wrote those things. And the ego, or ahankara, can still feel a little butthurt when we hear, the bad things. Like, we get all excited when we hear the good things, and then the not so good things, it's like, yeah, I don't want to hear that, or that's that just doesn't feel good. And so that's our ahankara. That is a part of our mind that supports that, and it's not about removing it. And I think that our modern times right now, it can often exasperate a bit of our ahankara. It can exasperate, I guess, the part of our ego, or the part of our sense of I, that may quickly start to compare itself. And when we start to compare ourselves, our sense of I starts to, at least from my experience, our sense of I starts to kind of dim or go down. And these social platforms that we have kind of lean into that, right? Like, you know, all the likes and the followers and the various platforms that we can quickly kind of assess, that our mind quickly assesses, like, how is my sense of I in here, right? It's like, it's so fast that our ego can feel kind of a quick little boost just from getting likes or just from getting followers. It can get a quick little boost. And then when we start to kind of compare naturally we might just unconsciously compare ourselves to other similar people. It can go into the part of our mind or the ego part that starts to not really value ourselves. And so, yeah, I think it's a matter of observing in your life of how this comes up, and observing it just to observe. I know that for me, like I said, it happens so fast that it might not be after the fact that I notice what my ahankara may be doing. And if I'm a bit out of balance, or if I am out of balance, my sense of I is not strong or is not loud. So yeah, we want that sense of I to feel firm and bold. And you know, I think that our modern sense of our understanding of yoga, with its poses and with its kind of like embellished gymnastics, like, can also exasperate this part of the mind, where we can go into maybe a bit of a boost when we land that hard pose, or when we're doing all these like fancy things. And it can also go into a bit of a lull or a low part when we're maybe looking around or feeling like we're not flexible enough or strong enough, or however the mind starts to, or the ahankara starts to direct itself. And I'm here to describe, or here wanting to share, that the physical practice of yoga is merely a representation of what our mind is capable of doing, of what our mind, or where our mind goes, and used as a tool to observe our mind. So the first principle, or one of the first principles of yoga, says that yoga is the calming or the cessations of the fluctuations of the mind. And I bring this up to share that one of the first principles of yoga doesn't necessarily speak about the physical poses. It speaks about the mind. And so when we are doing the physical aspect of yoga, which is a beautiful embodiment and a beautiful way to release stress, it's a beautiful way to get connected to our body and our breath, which we can often be disconnected from our various technological landscape. And the physical aspect of yoga is a way to observe our mind when we're moving with breath, when we're moving in flow. So yeah, the next time that you're in a movement-based class, see what comes up. See if you can catch a bit of the ahankara in different moments. You know, yeah. And if you're a teacher, if you're teaching to your students, speak to that aspect. Speak to that aspect of when there are moments when maybe you can observe in your students that the ahankara of that piece of comparison wants to come up. And not saying like, don't compare yourself, but more so encouraging that observation, more so encouraging to do their own introspection. Because as facilitators or guides or, you know, movers or teachers, we're merely here to speak the crumbs. I don't know why it's coming through like this. Speak the crumbs, but not give the whole cookie. So, you know, guide them with certain cues or guide them with certain suggestions, but don't tell them what to observe, right? Don't say that's the part of your mind, or that's your ego speaking, or that's the comparison that's coming up. Allow them to see for themselves, and that happens through questions and inquiry, and leaving it a bit open-ended for them to be able to be a witness of their own self and their own mind. You know, I think that's really the message that wants to come through, and a reminder that our mind is beautiful, our mind is powerful, our mind is also sometimes full of shadow and darkness, and you know, they're both needed at times, and we can lean on our tools like yoga, our tools like breath work, our tools of meditation or Reiki or healing. I know there's so many modalities out there, and I'm mostly speaking from a space of yoga, both body and mind. And I'm like, I lost my train of thought, but the reason that these tools are used is to become better observers and witness to our own self and our own journey. So take that with you. I welcome the conversation through direct messages, through comments, through email, and through coaching. So if this is something that you want to explore more, if this is something that you like learning about, these are things that I incorporate in my coaching offerings, my mindful coaching offerings. And you know, I had one of my students / clients explain it as a mix of yoga, meditation, conversation, intuitive therapy, and specific yoga practices for whatever you're going through. So I hope that's helpful to understand how I have combined some of the 4 parts of the mind into what I offer. And yeah, so yes, thank you all so much for listening.